Dr. Pax Waverly stood in front of the quantum glass mirror in the staff lounge, adjusting her name badge for the fourth time that morning. The holographic letters sparkled Dr. Pax Waverly, DVN, Earth Specialist. Below that, in smaller text, warning may handle dangerous creatures. She'd added that last part herself as a joke, but her alien colleagues took it deadly seriously. Another fascinating day at the Intergalactic Pet Hospital, she muttered, taking a sip from her coffee mug. The artificial gravity made the liquid swirl in strange patterns. Even after 6 months on Station 7, she still wasn't used to how it made her coffee dance. The staff lounge itself was a testament to the diversity of the hospital's employees. 3 different atmospheric chambers lined the walls, each calibrated for species that breathed something other than oxygen. The break room table had sections at various heights to accommodate everything from the towering Galaxians to the tiny Neptunian hoverers. And then there was the chair specially reinforced for Dr. Morp, whose crystalline body structure made him literally as dense as a diamond. Speaking of Dr. Morp. Good morning. Dr. Waverly, the crystalline veterinarian, clinked into the room, his faceted body refracting the overhead lights into a disco ball effect. I trust you haven't brought any more Earth predators to work today. Pax suppressed a sigh. The hamster I treated yesterday was not a predator, Dr. Morp. We've been over this. It had incisors, Dr. Waverly. Incisors. Each of Dr. Morp's words came out with a distinct chiming sound, like someone tapping a wine glass. On my home world, only the most fearsome creatures possess such weapons. It ate a piece of lettuce while you watched, clearly to lull us into a false sense of security. This was the problem with being the only human veterinarian in a facility staffed entirely by aliens. Everything from Earth was apparently terrifying. Pax had spent the last 6 months trying to convince her colleagues that Earth pets weren't going to murder them in their sleep. So far, she'd made about as much progress as a snail climbing a soap bubble. The morning staff meeting wasn't any better. Dr. Morp insisted on presenting his latest research on Earth fauna, which mostly consisted of badly misinterpreted nature documentaries. As you can see, he chimed, pointing to a picture of a house cat stretching. The creature extends its murder implements, which humans call claws, while displaying its killing teeth. This is clearly a threat display. It's yawning, Pax corrected, rubbing her temples. Like you do when you're tired. Except when you yawn, you sparkle. I do not sparkle. I display my crystalline magnificence in a professional manner. The other staff members a gelatinous blob named Dr. Blurp, a floating cloud of sentient gas called Dr. Wisp, and something that looked like a walking fern with too many eyes all nodded sagely at Dr. Morp's presentation. Pax checked her schedule for the day. Standard appointments: a Martian dust mite with digestive issues, a 3-headed Venusian songbird that had lost its middle voice, and, oh great, someone had scheduled an Earth pet consultation without running it by her first. That was never good. Last time that happened, Dr. Morp had declared a state of emergency over a goldfish. Just remember, she announced to the room at large, Earth animals are not automatically dangerous just because they don't photosynthesize or exist as pure energy. Some of them are actually quite nice. Dr. Morp's crystalline structure vibrated with skepticism. That's exactly what an apex predator's companion would say. The morning was young, and Pax could already feel a headache coming on. She made a mental note to stock up on more coffee. Something told her she was going to need it. The morning had been relatively peaceful until the emergency alert lit up every screen in the facility. Red text scrolled across Pax's diagnostic tablet: Earth creature. Category unknown. Threat level maximum. Oh, for crying out loud, Pax muttered, sprinting toward the intake bay. The last time they'd had a maximum threat level alert, it had been for a pet rabbit with a fondness for carrots. Apparently anything with teeth qualified as a threat these days. She burst into the receiving area to find Dr. Morp and 3 other staff members huddled behind an overturned anti-grav gurney. Dr. Blurp had stress divided into 2 smaller blurps. Dr. Wisp had condensed into a tight, nervous ball of gas. Where is it? Pax asked, looking around the seemingly empty room. Where's this terrifying Earth creature? Dr. Morp pointed one crystalline appendage toward a standard-issue pet carrier sitting innocently on the examination table. It arrived on the transport from Earth approximately 7 minutes ago. We've contained it, but the sounds it's making. He shuddered, sending rainbow refractions across the walls. From within the carrier came a sound that made all the alien staff members flinch meow. Pax walked over to the carrier and peered through the front gate. A pair of golden eyes stared back at her, followed by another gentle meow. "It's a cat," she said, trying not to laugh. "A Maine Coon by the looks of it. And a pretty one at that." A what Dr. Morp's voice chimed with horror. One of those notorious Earth hunters, the ones that smaller creatures call their doombringer. "Well, mice probably aren't fans," Pax admitted, reading the carrier's info tag. "His name is Mr. Whiskers. He belongs to a human family that just moved to the station. They need him checked for space travel certification and a basic health scan." "Absolutely not," Dr. Morp declared, his crystalline surface clouding with anxiety. "I've seen the documents on these creatures. They possess not only teeth and claws but also enhanced night vision, ultrasonic hearing, and the ability to land on their feet after falling from great heights. They are clearly engineered killing machines." The cat chose that moment to let out a massive yawn, displaying an impressive array of teeth. Dr. Blurp's two halves merged back together in fright, only to immediately separate again. "Look at those biological weapons," Dr. Morp chimed frantically. "And I've heard rumors they can hypnotize their prey with a special frequency called." Purring, Pax reached for the carrier door. "Let me just show you." "Don't," all the alien staff shouted in unison. Dr. Wisp expanded in alarm, setting off the ventilation system's gas sensors. "The creature appears docile now," Dr. Morp said, his voice hitting a higher pitch that made the windows vibrate. "But that's how they hunt. They lure you in with their, what's the term? Floofiness. Then strike when your guard is down." Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to start grooming his paw. "By the crystal moons," Dr. Morp gasped. "It's sharpening its weapons while we watch. The audacity." Pax looked at her terrified colleagues, then at the carrier containing what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary, if rather large, house cat. She checked her watch. It wasn't even lunchtime yet. "Right," she said, picking up the carrier. "I'll handle this one myself. Obviously. Be careful." Dr. Waverly, Dr. Morp called after her as she headed for her examination room. "If you don't return in 10 minutes, we'll assume it has claimed another victim." "It's a cat, not a xenomorph," Pax called back, then realized her alien colleagues probably hadn't seen Alien, which, come to think of it, was probably for the best. Behind her, she could hear Dr. Morp starting to compose her eulogy. It was going to be one of those days. Pax carried the carrier into her examination room, which looked noticeably different from the others in the facility. While her colleagues had sleek, sterile spaces filled with holographic diagnostic equipment and quantum scanners, her room featured good old-fashioned scratch-resistant surfaces and easily washable floors. Experience had taught her that Earth pets and high-tech medical equipment didn't always mix well. "You're not the first Earth pet to cause a panic here, Mr. Whiskers," she said, setting the carrier down. "Let me tell you about some of your predecessors while I get set up." The great goldfish incident had been her first week on the job. Dr. Morp had observed the small orange fish swimming in circles and declared it must be performing some kind of ritual war dance. The fact that it had no visible weapons only made it more suspicious, according to him. Clearly its weapons must be concealed by advanced evolution. Then there was the hamster horror of last month. A routine checkup had turned into a station-wide alert when the tiny rodent escaped its carrier. Dr. Blurp had found it stuffing food into its cheek pouches and concluded it must be some kind of biological weapon, storing toxic substances for a future attack. It took 3 hours to convince everyone that hamsters weren't actually tiny furry doomsday preppers. But my personal favorite, Pax continued, pulling on her exam gloves, was the parakeet panic of last Tuesday. The small green bird had caused mass hysteria by mimicking Dr. Morp's crystalline chiming sound. Half the staff became convinced it was a shapeshifter mocking their species. The other half thought it was trying to steal their souls through sound-based mind control. The fact that it kept saying "pretty bird" only made them more suspicious. What exactly was it plotting by announcing its own attractiveness? Mr. Whiskers listened to these stories with typical feline indifference, occasionally switching his tail. Through the walls, Pax could hear her colleagues in an emergency staff meeting, probably drafting new protocols for dealing with Earth fauna. Last time, they'd suggested requiring all Earth pets to wear warning labels and tiny muzzles. Even the goldfish. The thing is, Pax said, carefully opening the carrier door, they're not actually bad vets. Dr. Morp is brilliant with crystalline life forms. Dr. Blurp once saved an entire litter of Jovian gas puppies. They just don't understand Earth animals. Mr. Whiskers stepped regally out of his carrier, surveyed the room with casual disdain, and immediately started rubbing against Pax's hand, purring loudly. From the hallway came Dr. Morp's alarmed voice. The sound weapon has been activated. Dr. Waverly, are you still conscious? The purring is fine, Pax called back. Everything's fine. That's exactly what someone under mind control would say. Pax sighed and reached for her medical scanner. The device, designed for general xenobiological examination, had taken her weeks to calibrate for Earth creatures. Her colleagues had watched in horror as she'd modified it, convinced she was developing some kind of defense system against Earth's deadliest beings. You know what's ironic, Mr. Whiskers, she said, running the scanner over the contentedly purring cat. On their worlds, most pets are things we'd consider actually dangerous. Dr. Morp's people keep sentient crystals that shoot laser beams when they're happy. Dr. Blurp has a pet that's basically a living black hole. But a house cat, that's where they draw the line. The cat responded by flopping over and exposing his belly, a classic feline trap that Pax knew better than to fall for. Even so, the gesture sent new waves of panic through her colleagues watching on the security feed. It's exposing its vital organs, came Dr. Wisp's gaseous whisper from the hallway. It must be so confident in its killing abilities that it doesn't fear attack. Pax was about to respond when her scanner beeped, showing the results of Mr. Whiskers' exam. Everything looked normal, except... Oh, she said, looking at one particular reading. Well, that might actually be a problem. Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to spot something moving in the hospital's ventilation system. Before Pax could react, the large cat had launched himself straight up, somehow managing to pop loose one of the ceiling panels. No, Pax lunged for the cat, but it was too late. Mr. Whiskers had disappeared into the ceiling, leaving her alone to explain to her terrified colleagues why there was now an apex predator loose in the ventilation system. From the hallway came the sound of Dr. Morp initiating emergency lockdown procedures, followed by Dr. Blurp's stress dividing into 4 separate parts. Pax looked up at the ceiling hole, then at her scanner results, then at the now empty carrier. Well, she said to no one in particular, this should be interesting. The station's emergency alert system wasn't designed for escaped pets. As red lights flashed and sirens wailed, the automated system tried its best to classify the situation. Attention. Uncontained Earth entity in ventilation system. Threat level undefined. Current status fluffy but dangerous. Please remain calm and avoid making PS sounds. Pax sprinted down the hallway toward the environmental control room, trying to ignore the chaos erupting around her. Dr. Blurp's 4 parts had now become 8 smaller parts, each running in different directions. Dr. Wisp had spread himself so thin with anxiety that he was basically just a slight haze in the air. And Dr. Morp. I'm initiating the Defense Against Earth Creatures Protocol. His crystalline voice rang through the facility as he typed frantically at a control panel. We don't have a Defense Against Earth Creatures Protocol, Pax called out as she ran past. I just wrote one. Step 1, panic. Step 2, more panic. Step 3. Not helping, Pax skidded around a corner, nearly colliding with a group of floating orb nurses who were attempting to barricade a doorway with tongue depressors. Has anyone actually seen where the cat went? The facility's security feeds showed brief glimpses of Mr. Whiskers moving through the ventilation system. The cat seemed to be heading somewhere specific, which worried Pax more than random wandering would have. Those scanner results were still fresh in her mind. The creature is displaying advanced tactical knowledge of our infrastructure, Dr. Morp announced, studying one of the security feeds. Observe how it navigates the ventilation junctions with military precision. He's a cat. They just like small spaces, Pax tried to explain while pulling up the station's environmental systems map. Though actually in this case he might be. A loud crash from above made everyone jump. Through the ceiling came a distinct sound, MROWWWW. It's using sonic warfare. Dr. Morp's crystalline surface went cloudy with fear. Quick, everyone modulate your resonant frequencies. It's not sonic warfare, it's Pax started to say, but was interrupted by another crash and a much louder MROWWWWW. She studied the environmental system's map more closely. The ventilation system connected to. Oh no. The auxiliary food storage unit, she muttered. He's heading for the auxiliary food storage unit. Our supplies, Dr. Morp chimed in horror. The beast means to cut off our resources and starve us into submission. No, he's not trying to steal your food, Pax said, already running toward the storage unit. He's trying to get to the crash. The ceiling panel above the auxiliary food storage unit burst open, and Mr. Whiskers landed gracefully on top of a supply crate. In the storage unit's corner, emerging from a small hole in the wall, was what Pax's scanner had detected earlier, a Rigellian space mouse. The Rigellian space mouse, a creature known for its ability to phase through solid matter and cause general havoc with station electronics, took one look at Mr. Whiskers and let out a squeak that somehow managed to convey both surprise and indignation. Nobody move, Pax said carefully. Rigellian space mice are notorious for. The mouse phased through the floor, causing a cascade of electrical shorts that plunged the entire section into darkness. Emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in a dramatic red glow. In the chaos that followed, several things happened at once. Dr. Morp began reciting what appeared to be crystalline last rites. The station's artificial gravity hiccuped. Mr. Whiskers, demonstrating the hunting instincts that had so worried Pax's colleagues, launched himself at exactly where the mouse would reappear. Dr. Blurp's 8 parts somehow became 16. And the station's main computer, affected by the mouse's phase shifting, began playing EarthCat videos on every screen in the facility. Sentient, the emergency system announced. Current situation has escalated from code fluffy to code extremely fluffy. Also, playing Funny Cats compilation 47 on all channels. This is not part of emergency protocol. Repeat, cat videos not part of emergency protocol. Pax watched Mr. Whiskers corner the Rigellian space mouse, which was now trapped between a large cat and a hard place. She had to admit, her colleagues might have had a small point about Earth cats being impressive predators. Not that she'd ever tell them that. Dr. Waverly, Dr. Morp's voice chimed nervously from the doorway. Is this the part where the creature begins its rampage? No, Pax said, reaching slowly for her medical kit. This is the part where I explain what's actually going on. But first she pulled out a bag of treats that made a distinctive crinkling sound. Hey, Mr. Whiskers, who wants a snack? At the sound of treats being shaken, Mr. Whiskers' ears performed that instant radar dish swivel that cat ears are famous for. The Rigellian space mouse, sensing a chance for escape, tried to phase through another wall. Unfortunately, its nervous state caused it to only make it halfway through, leaving it stuck in a rather undignified position. Now, Pax said calmly, shaking the treat bag again. Would anyone like to know what's actually been happening here? The creature is obviously mind-controlling you through its purring frequency, Dr. Morp declared, though he had edged slightly closer to get a better look. That's the only explanation for your continued survival. Mr. Whiskers, completely ignoring his supposedly terrified audience, trotted over to Pax and began weaving between her legs. The assembled alien staff watched in amazement as she reached down and scratched behind his ears, producing an eruption of purrs. What you're witnessing, Pax explained, is not mind control, but something far more powerful, the ancient treaty between cats and humans. Treaty Dr. Blurp's 16 parts had begun slowly merging back together out of curiosity. Thousands of years ago, cats and humans made a deal. They would help keep our dwellings free of pests, and in exchange we would provide food, shelter, and infinite chin scratches. She demonstrated the chin scratches, causing Mr. Whiskers to purr even louder. But Dr. Morp's crystalline surface was showing confused patterns. The teeth, the claws, are for hunting pests. Like, for example, Rigellian space mice that have been chewing through our power conduits for the past week. Everyone turned to look at the half-phased mouse, which had the decency to look embarrassed. You mean Dr. Wisp condensed back into a more normal cloud shape? The creature was protecting the station. Cat's gonna cat, Pax shrugged. They're predators, yes, but they're predators that humans domesticated specifically to hunt troublesome pests. Mr. Whiskers here probably sensed the mouse as soon as he arrived and was trying to do his job. The mouse finally managed to unphase itself from the wall, dropping to the floor with a squeak. Before it could scurry away, Pax produced a small containment field generator from her medical kit and activated it, trapping the pest in a humane force field bubble. But what about the purring? Dr. Morp asked, his scientific curiosity apparently overcoming his fear. Surely that's some kind of weapon. Watch, Pax said, picking up Mr. Whiskers. The large cat immediately draped himself over her shoulder like a furry scarf, purring contentedly. Purring is actually a sign of contentment. Sometimes they even do it to help themselves heal. It's basically the opposite of a weapon. Fascinating, Dr. Morp chimed, moving closer. And the practice of exposing their underside. A sign of trust, though usually a trap. I wouldn't try it if I were you. You might chip something. The other staff members had begun creeping closer, their professional curiosity winning out over their terror. Mr. Whiskers, being a cat, had already decided that all this attention was his natural due. So Dr. Blurp's now mostly reassembled form burbled, "It's not going to eat us." Mr. Whiskers weighs about 15 pounds. Most of you are significantly larger than that. Pax scratched the cat's chin again. Also, he has a gourmet cat food subscription. He's not interested in eating anyone. Then why did our threat assessment protocols classify Earth felines as extreme dangers? Dr. Morp asked, cautiously extending one crystalline appendage toward Mr. Whiskers. Probably because someone's been watching too many nature documentaries about lions and tigers, Pax said pointedly. House cats are domestic predators. Emphasis on the domestic. The most dangerous thing about them is their ability to knock things off high surfaces. Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to reach out and delicately tap a nearby medical scanner off the counter. Like that, Pax sighed. They do that. Remarkable, Dr. Morp chimed, his fear apparently forgotten in the face of new scientific observations. The creature displays both hunting prowess and deliberate object manipulation, yet chooses to use these abilities for minor inconvenience. Welcome to cats, Pax said. Now who wants to learn how to properly pet one? There are rules and breaking them may result in death. Just kidding. Mostly. 3 weeks after the Great Cat Incident, as it came to be known, Pax stood in the staff lounge contemplating the many changes that had taken place at the Intergalactic Pet Hospital. The most obvious change was the new hospital mascot. Mr. Whiskers' family had been so pleased with his Rogelian space mouse catching abilities that they'd worked out a deal the cat would split his time between their quarters and the hospital, where he served as both official pest control and unofficial ambassador of Earth fauna. Remarkable creature, Dr. Morp chimed, watching Mr. Whiskers patrol the hallway outside. Did you know it can calculate the exact force needed to knock objects off surfaces without damaging them? I've been running tests. For science, of course. Of course, Pax said, hiding a smile. Dr. Morp had gone from mortal terror to academic fascination with stunning speed. He'd already published 3 papers on feline behavior, including one titled The Strategic Advantage of Knocking Things Over, a study in feline physics. The hospital itself had undergone some renovations. The ventilation system now included what they called tactical cat paths, clear tubes running alongside the main ducts that allowed Mr. Whiskers to patrol for space mice without disrupting the environmental systems. Dr. Blurp had designed them, after finally managing to stay in one piece long enough to complete the blueprints. We've updated the threat assessment protocols, Dr. Wisp announced, floating into the lounge. Earth creatures are now classified by actual behavior rather than number of teeth. Which means, Pax asked, though she already knew where this was going. The hamster has been downgraded from potential biological weapon to harmless fuzzy thing that, like seeds, the parakeet is no longer classified as a potential soul stealer and cat's doctor. Wisp condensed briefly in amusement, are now listed as mostly harmless but don't touch the belly. Mr. Whiskers sauntered into the lounge, carrying something in his mouth. He dropped it at Dr. Morp's feet, another Rogelian space mouse, caught in the act of trying to phase through the pharmacy wall. Good killing machine, Dr. Morp chimed happily, reaching for the approved cat treats they now kept in every room. Who's an apex predator? You are. You know, Pax said, watching her crystalline colleague carefully offer treats to the cat. When I took this job, I thought I'd be the one teaching all of you about Earth pets. But honestly, Mr. Whiskers has been a much better instructor. Indeed, Dr. Morp agreed. Though I still have questions. For instance, why do they sleep in sunbeams? Is it some form of solar charging? And why do they make biscuits? Is it a form of stress testing surfaces for structural weakness? Making biscuits, Pax raised an eyebrow. The thing with the paws. Like this, Dr. Morp attempted to demonstrate, creating a sound like marbles being dropped on a xylophone. Before Pax could answer, the reception desk called Dr. Waverly to the front. Please. We have a new Earth patient checking in. What is it this time? Dr. Morp asked, his crystalline surface showing excited patterns. Another fascinating predator. According to the intake form, Pax checked her tablet and started laughing. It's a goldfish. Ah yes, Dr. Morp chimed seriously. The mysterious water-dwelling creature with the hypnotic swimming patterns. Don't worry, Dr. Waverly. Thanks to Mr. Whiskers, we now know that not all Earth creatures are as dangerous as they appear. As if to prove this point wrong, Mr. Whiskers chose that exact moment to knock Dr. Morp's favorite quantum stethoscope off the counter. Most of them. Anyway, Pax said, heading for the front desk. Behind her, she could hear Dr. Morp beginning to dictate notes for his next paper, The Psychological Implications of Gravitational Manipulation in Domestic Earth Predators. Why do they push things off high places? Just another day at the Intergalactic Pet Hospital, where every Earth pet was a potential learning experience, and even the most fearsome apex predators could turn out to be excellent teachers. As long as you remembered not to touch the belly. That part of the warning label was staying,